our Back to School series. This episode, we're going to be faced with the antagonist of many Americans' lives, student loans. I know, so scary, right? But have no fear, because hopefully after today's episode, you will be able to conquer student loans, because today I am interviewing Ryan Law. Ryan is a certified financial planner, professional, and an award-winning educator passionate about simplifying personal finances, specifically student loans. And he's also the author of Student Loan Planning, a borrower's guide to understanding and repaying student loan debt. I hope you enjoy the interview. Hi, Ryan. Thank you so much for coming on Wi-Fi Matters. I'm super excited to talk to you about a pretty stressful but very important topic, student loans.
Thank you so much. I'm so happy to be here.
Thank you. So, what is a student loan?
Yeah, a student loan is basically a loan that is made for one purpose, and that's to help pay for school. So it can help pay for the cost of tuition. You can take out student loans to help pay for even computers and other equipment, housing, other things like that that you need to pay for while you're going to school. So it's meant to be a loan that you don't have to pay off while you're going to school, but then you pay it back after.
Okay, I see. And so, why should we as high school students, when should we start thinking about student loans?
Yeah, I think that there's a couple of things that would lead up to that and lead up to a high school student starting to think about student loans. And the initial one would be where you're planning to go to school.
Oh,
There's so many options out there, and there's so much variability in the cost of college, from a community college in your local town to going to an League school across the nation, or even universities outside of the United States. And so I think that that's really the first thing is to consider is where am I considering going to school?
okay.
And then from there, you can really start to dig into the cost of college and what how much you have saved for that, scholarships that may be available. So in going back to your original question, I think that you should start thinking about student loans in conjunction with other decisions, such as where am I going to go to school? What am I going to study? So really that sophomore, junior year of high school is when you want to start thinking about those things.
Okay. Um, and I feel like there's some sort of, I guess, I don't know, stigma around the fact that sometimes you should base it off where you want to apply with how much the school costs or what your financial background is. So, what is your opinion on, should you first apply to all your colleges that you personally want, or should you first take into account your finances?
Right. Well, I think both things are important to take a look at. Finances are critical. And a lot of times I meet with students who are looking at going to school or looking to go to grad school or something like that. And they haven't really considered the cost too much at that point. They just are considering, where do I want to go? What is my dream university? Maybe there's a really good journalism program, but you're going to be paying out of state tuition. And so there's a lot of things to look at when it comes to making that decision and deciding uh, how much you're going to spend, because cost has to be one of the factors that come into play there. Of
Yeah.
course, do they have a good degree program in the area that you're looking to study? Do they have good job placement? Do they have good graduate admissions if you're looking to go to graduate school? So all of those come into play, but certainly cost has to be a factor.
Okay, I see. And so who should we talk to about student loans?
Yep, I think it should start in most cases with your high school counselor. They should have some basic knowledge of student loans and how to help pay for it, and they can certainly help look some things up as well. But I think other people need to be involved in that conversation as well, and that your parents, if they've gone to college and they're familiar with that. There are experts out there who can help with student loans. There's a lot of great websites, some
Mhm.
information that the Department of Education has put out. I think any of those are good resources. Talking to people, maybe friends or siblings who have gone to college before, and checking with them and seeing how they handled the student loan situation. And then you can always meet with a financial aid counselor at a college campus as well. They would be open to meeting with somebody who's thinking about going to school there and discussing what financial aid would look like.
Okay, cool. Um, and I guess for the US in particular, what is the average amount of student loan?
Yeah, It goes up every year,
Yeah.
and it's about 70% of all students who now take out student loans, and the average is about $30,000.
Oh,
And that varies from state to state. I think last time I looked it up, Connecticut was the highest at about 38,000, and Utah was the lowest at about 19,000.
okay. I'm a little like confused because can anyone apply for student loans, or do you have to have a certain income and then you can't apply?
Right. No, and anybody can apply. So in order to get financial aid of any type, so the financial aid, when we look at that, there's three things that count as financial aid. There's grants, there's work study, and there's student loans.
Mhm.
Scholarships are set up separately, but to get those first three, the grants, the work study, and the student loans, you fill out something called the FAFSA, or the Free Application for Federal Student Aid. So
Oh,
every student should fill that out every single year.
mhm.
What that document does is it's sent to the school. So when you fill it out, you choose which schools you want it to go to. Then they will send you back an award letter or a letter about your financial aid and say what you qualify for in each of those areas.
Okay.
And so everybody's eligible for some what are called unsubsidized student loans, which just basically mean that they're going to accrue interest while you're going to school. And so that there's other loans that are made for that they're called need-based loans, or they're subsidized,
Mhm.
where the amount you take out stays the same. So if you
Okay.
take out $5,000, you don't pay any interest, no interest
Mhm.
accrues. When you go to repay it, you pay back $5,000 at repayment.
Okay, I see. And also, one thing that I've always been a little unsure about is there a difference between financial aid and student loan?
No, student loans is part of financial aid, and so
Oh,
it's just one component of financial aid. There's, when you're looking at paying for college, you've got student loans is certainly a part of it. You've got scholarships that you may have.
mhm.
You may have a housing scholarship. Those are also available. There's working on campus or work study. There's grant money that you don't have to pay back. So you may contribute some of your savings, or your parents might help pay for it. Grandparents, there's all these different savings plans for college that may come into play. So all of those combined together would create your personal financial aid packet. But as far as the school is concerned, they're going to be talking about grants, work study, and student loans.
Okay, I see. And so how can a rising sophomore like me start financial planning for college so I can keep the cost low and also so I can be prepared?
Yeah, great question. A couple of things that you can do. I would recommend that as part of your even sophomore, junior year, somewhere in that range, that you start visiting colleges.
Oh,
So even go to if there's one in your hometown, just go to that one to start. Go set up a tour, meet with some people there so you can start to learn about that. And then if you can afford it, go on other college tours as well, where
mhm.
you can go to maybe your dream school, and you can go and see what a classroom is like there, and go on a campus tour. So that's certainly something that you should consider doing, but also in the process building up your resume with job experience that you've got, volunteer experience, any of these types of things that will help show to a college counselor that you're well-rounded, that you've got all these various activities that you're involved in, leadership. Those
Mhm.
things help to lead to some scholarships as well. And scholarships, student loans you have to pay back. Scholarships and grants you don't. That's
Okay.
money that you get that you don't have to pay back. And so that's the very best kind of financial aid that you can get.
Okay, I see. And so what are the well, I guess you sort of touched up on this, but what are all the different types of loans available for students?
Yeah, the main ones are they're called direct government loans, and there's a few different subtypes of that we can go into if you want to, but and we've talked about it a little bit already, the subsidized or the unsubsidized loans. So that's the main program out there, is this direct loan, where it is a loan from the government directly to you as the student. So your parents don't co-sign. That is a loan that is made to you as a student, and that you then pay back after school.
Oh.
After that, there's some other options available. There's loans that your parents can take out if you're an undergraduate student,
Mhm.
or if you're a graduate student, there's other loans. They're called plus loans that you can take out, that you would then pay back after, or your parents would pay back after.
Oh,
There's Also, one other type, there's private student loans, and these are offered through banks and other financial institutions, and they've got those available. You would take those out co-signing with your parents or a grandparent or somebody like that.
Okay, I see. Would you say there's like a safe amount of money you can take out for student loan debt? Um, I guess what's the highest end and what's the safest number you can
Sure.
get?
Yeah, what I've seen recommended in this area is that you never take out more than two times what your expected annual salary is going to be after. And so if you, and I've also seen one times, which I think is, probably even a safer amount. So if you plan to make 40,000, don't take out more than 40. But I think that that's even a little bit high. The goal should be to keep your student loan debt as low as possible because it is going to affect your lifestyle after you graduate.
Yeah,
You're
definitely.
going to have this payment for 10 to 25 years in some cases. So you just want to keep it as low as possible. I've seen as high, I mean, I'm helping a guy right now who has about $255,000 in student loan debt. And he's not a doctor. I mean, that's pretty common for doctors or vets or others like that. But it's becoming common to see student loan balances, 50, 60, 70, even $100,000. There's one orthodontist that I was reading about recently. He's got about $1.2 million in student loan debt, and so I've seen the very high end, but I think what in general, the lower you can keep that, the less it's going to affect your lifestyle after college.
Okay. And you talked about like knowing what your expected annual salary is, but if you're like a lot of people, they're undecided with what they want to do when they're an adult. So like,
Right.
what if you don't know what job you're gonna do, how could you plan for how much loan
Yeah.
to take out?
Yeah, that's a great question. And a lot of us, even if we thought we knew what we were going to do, we either change majors a
Yeah.
couple of times in college or we go into a career that's totally opposite of what we intended to do. So I think a couple of strategies come into play here. I'm a huge fan of going to a really low cost school to get your generals out of the way.
Mm.
So a community college in a lot of states, they actually will pay for a community college. The state will, if you've got a good GPA from high school. So I think that that is an excellent option to go for 1 to 2 years to a really low cost local school, community college. Keep that cost really low. And in the process, you'll probably start to decide what you really want to focus on. I hear from people all the time who say, oh, I was planning to be a doctor, but then I took that first biology class and I knew it wasn't for me. And so why pay so much more to go to an elite school and get that biology class when you can go to a local school and start to discover that? So I think from there, you can decide, you can start to see, okay, this is an area that I really want to focus on and that I think I might want to go into. And then you can decide as you're looking at other schools, which ones have good programs in that area. And then you can start to discover a little bit more about student loans. But I think that the advice to keep it as low as possible still comes into play. And so that we still want to keep that student loan debt, regardless of what you want to do. Even if you have no clue at this point what you want to do for a job,
Mhm.
just keep it as low as possible, especially those first couple of years. And then you'll be able to keep that balance lower, even if you transfer somewhere else after that.
Okay, I see. Um, I think you were saying if, like you said, with the orthodontist, or even if you're a doctor, those
Hmm.
type of jobs, they tend to take out more student loans.
Right.
Oh, okay. So should you, I don't know, should you like, well, don't avoid being a doctor, but
Oh, no, no.
everybody should
Yeah.
know that because I don't think I registered that if you're certain professions, then you're gonna take out more student loans. So
Yeah, and it's just a factor of the longer you're going to school, the more student
yeah,
loan debt you're likely to take out. And so your doctors, some lawyers, veterinary students, those types of careers, but they also have a higher earning potential
yeah,
than somebody, with a general degree from a university. So they're going to be making in a lot of cases pretty low when they're residents, but once they become attending doctors or they own a clinic or something, they're going to be making a lot more money and can pay back that amount of student loan debt.
yeah, I see now.
Yeah.
Yeah. So currently, what are the interest rates on student loans, and also with the coronavirus, how is it affected? I think they've become lower, right?
Yes, that's correct. So student loan rates are set, the federal student loan rates are set every July 1st. So the new rates kick in on July 1st of every year, and they apply to any student loans taken out from July 1st through June 30th of the next year. So I don't have the numbers right in front of me. I looked them up earlier, and it's about 3.4% now on most student loans. There's some that are a little bit higher, and that has dropped quite a bit since last year, and it's because of the economy and the economy has been affected by the COVID-19 and how everything has kind of gone down. And so we've seen loan rates go down on cars and houses, and so student loans follow that same pattern, and they have dropped right now because of that.
Okay. Also, could you explain to our audience, for some who may not know, what exactly interest rates are on specifically student loans, I guess?
Yeah. Yep. So an interest rate is just it's basically the cost of borrowing money. And so if you're going to borrow, let's say $5,000 on a student loan debt, if it's a certain type of student loan debt, if it's subsidized, as I mentioned earlier, you're going to pay back $5,000 when you get to repayment time. But that's when that interest rate kicks in. So let's just say that your interest rate was 3.5% on that. And so they're now going to charge you interest on that $5,000. So you're going to pay back $5,000 plus some additional on top of that because that's the cost of borrowing that money.
And that's how they can make money, the people who are loan. Okay, I see.
Exactly. Yes.
So in your book, you have this section where you talk about
Mhm.
prepaying your student loans. So could you expand a little more on this?
Yeah, prepaying any of your loans is almost always a good idea if you can afford to do it. And so the idea is that let's just say that you've got somebody with the average of $30,000 in student loan debt, and they have some additional money come in, maybe from so they're making a payment. Let's just say it's $200 a month, and they can afford to pay 250 or even 300. That extra 50 or $100 that you're paying is going all towards reducing that 30,000 in principal. So it's not going to interest, it's going to reduce that principal and make it so you're paying it off a lot faster. So ultimately you're going to pay less interest if you prepay, but you're also going to be paying it off in a shorter amount of time.
Okay.
Now, you do want to be cautious when you're looking at that though, because if you've got, say, high interest credit card debt, you want to focus on that first. Uh,
Okay.
you also want to focus on making sure you've got the right insurance in place and making sure that you can afford to you can put some money away for emergencies. And so you don't want to pay off student loans. They're low interest, in comparison to a lot of other loans. There's also some tax deductions available when it comes to paying off that interest. And so you want to make sure that you're taking the steps in the proper order and making sure that you're focusing any extra money that you might put towards student loans, get some other things cleared up first, and then maybe you move on to the student loans after that and prepay those.
But I guess so the overall idea of prepaying is trying to obviously set aside money for everything else,
Mhm.
and like that needs to be prioritized before student loans, and
Right.
then just try to pay them off as quickly as possible so the interest rate doesn't so you don't have to pay more over time, I guess.
Exactly.
Okay.
Right. Let's just say that on that $5,000 I've mentioned a few times, let's just say that you're going to pay $2,000 in interest if you pay it off over, 10 or 25 years. So instead, if you can pay $1,000 in interest and pay it off in 6 years or 7 years, that's just more money that's going to be in your pocket ultimately instead of being paid to somebody else.
Okay, I see. And so are there any other options besides student loans, financial aid, and scholarships?
hmm Grants is another area, and those grants are provided to those who are, when they fill out the FAFSA, those who have the most need. And
Oh,
so the FAFSA determines, based on all your financial information, parents' financial information, what your need is for school, and that those who have the greatest need are going to qualify for grants. And grants is just, it's similar to scholarships, where I mean you don't earn grants, but you get a grant and you don't have to pay it back, and so it helps pay for tuition, sometimes housing fees, different things like that. And so that's another option that helps. But I'm also a big fan of students working while they're going to school. There's been studies that have shown that those who work around 10 to 15, 20 hours actually do better in school than their peers who don't work at all.
that's
They
interesting.
Yeah, well, they learn time management skills. They learn about they have to balance their study time and their work time. They have to negotiate a schedule with somebody. So there's all these skills that they're learning that they can put into place in their lives, and so it just ends up being better for them. And then you don't have to take out a loan to pay for things like books or food, or you only want to take out the minimum amount of loans possible. So you don't want to go and pay for pizza with your student loans. It's a bad idea.
So with regards to repayment for student loans, what are the options that are available? And out of the options, which one is the best?
Yeah. So I'll answer the second question first. Which one is the best? It depends on the situation. So it depends on if you're trying to pay them off as fast as possible. Depends on if you want to stretch the payment out, if you want to have the lowest payment possible, if you're looking at student loan forgiveness, which we can talk about in a minute. So it really depends on the situation. So to go back to your first question though, there's basically two types of repayment. There's repayment that is based on the amount of debt that you have, and you pay that off. You pay off the entire amount plus interest in 10 up to 10 years or up to 25 years. So that's the first one. And then the second one is actually not based on your balance, but it's based on your income and your family size. So they're called income driven repayment plans. And you pay a set amount of your income instead of paying off. Let's just say you're under the standard plan, maybe the standard 10-year plan, you might pay $250 a month. Where an income driven plan, if you've got a low income or a larger family or something, it's going to pull that payment down even as low as $0 per month. So you can have an income driven repayment where you're paying nothing each month, or you might be paying $50 or $25. So you're going to pay that off over 20 to 25 years. And then after that point, some amount of those loans are going to be forgiven. So you might have, $10,000 or $15,000 worth of loans that's forgiven. And that is, something that a lot of students are switching over to those income driven
Income
plans.
driven. And so is it based off of how much you're making after college then?
Yeah. So it changes each year based on your family size and your income.
Okay, I see. And so are there any I guess other student loan forgiveness programs?
Yeah, that's a good question. So a couple of times when you don't have to pay back student loans, if the student becomes disabled or they pass away, nobody owes those loans. So those loans are forgiven at that point, tax free. Nobody has to pay taxes on it. So that's a big one. But the other big one is it's called public service loan forgiveness, and it's if you work for the government
Oh,
or nonprofit. So let's just say that you work for maybe you're a firefighter for your town, or you work at the public library, or you work at the public university or the public elementary school. All of those would qualify for loan forgiveness, where they pay off their loans or they pay on their loans for 10 years, and then they're forgiven tax free of everything else that's remaining after that.
that's pretty cool. So
Yeah.
does
Yep.
it
I've worked with a number of students or people who have qualified for that. And it really, it's a program that a lot of people think, oh, it's too good to be true, but I've
yeah.
seen it work for people.
Um so what are some of the red flags we need to watch out for during the student loan process?
hmm I would say the biggest one is just being aware of what your total balance is and what interest rates you're going to be paying on those. And so we find that a lot of students have no idea how much they have in student loan debt.
Mhm.
They have a general idea sometimes, or they have a guess, but they haven't ever looked it up. And it's really easy to, if you just search for Department of Education website or studentloan.gov, you're going to find a place where you can log in and you can see exactly where you're at, and even how much interest is accruing on some of your loans if it's accruing interest. And so I think that's the biggest, red flag first is people who just don't have any idea.
You have to be
Another
aware.
one.
Mhm.
Yo, sorry, go ahead.
No, I'm just saying you have to be aware.
Yeah, you've got to be aware. And that's, I mean, I'm sure you've seen that as you've interviewed others. And it's so important to be aware of what your budget is and what your debt is, and all of those things come into play.
Mhm.
The next thing I would say is a red flag or something that you should be aware of is, so not having that knowledge first place, but making sure that you're just staying on top of it and getting those loans paid off when it comes time to pay them off.
Mhm.
There's a lot of, you can pay a lot of interest, or you can have a lot of problems happen if you don't pay those student loans back. It's called going into default on your student loans. and it can really affect how much you're paying back, and what kind of consequences come into place. And then I guess one other is that to be aware of private student loans. So I mentioned this earlier when we talked about the type of student loans.
The bank, the ones at banks.
Yeah, exactly. Through a bank or credit union or financial institution, you want to take out the government loans first before you ever get into the private loan arena. If you're having to take out private student loans in addition to federal student loans, you probably want to reevaluate your college choices or how much you're spending on housing or other things, because those private student loans, I have seen them get up as high as 18 or 19% interest, and they really uh, yeah, they can really mess up your finances. Yeah.
So if you are in a messy situation, who should you talk to?
hmm Yeah, there's a couple of people that you can talk to. So certainly a financial aid counselor at the college. So even after you've graduated, you can go back and visit with them, and they would be happy to work with you on that. They don't want you to go into default. They don't want you to not pay back your student loans. And so they would certainly be open to talking to you. There's also at many universities across the country, there's these centers called student money management centers. They may have different names, but they're a place where you can go and get professional advice from your peers who have studied this and really dug into this as to what you can do with your student loan debt and how you can get it paid back. And so that would be another option. Certainly, parents and others who have gone to college and may be aware of that. But if you're in a situation and you don't know who to reach out to, I mean, start with your college, but certainly there are student loan professionals out there that you can work with as well, who can help you to make sure you've got everything set up correctly and get that debt paid off as quickly as possible.
Okay, I see. And so I've been hearing a lot of issues with like federal loan systems and how it affects students' credit card scores, and also how I guess colleges are making a lot of money off of the whole like student loans plus the rejections and all of that
Mhm.
stuff. So what are your thoughts on the whole student loan industry?
Yeah, that's an interesting question, because prior to when I was going to college, there were a couple of different loan systems. There was the direct one through the government, and then there was what were called FFEL loans. And so that it doesn't really matter what that, those don't exist anymore.
Mhm.
But there was a lot of options when it came to your student loans, where you could choose different programs, different incentives. All of that has gone away now, and it's all directly through the federal government. And so there's been a lot of criticisms of the system because of how much interest the government is making. So it's not the universities that are making money off of your student loans. They actually are negatively affected if you don't pay back your student loans. And so they're cautious in a lot of cases about recommending too much student loan debt. But the federal government is making a lot of money off of the interest on these student loans. And so that's one of the biggest criticisms, is why are they making so much money off of the student loan system?
Mhm.
And so I think that that's an area that we really need to look at carefully and consider why they're charging such high interest. In some cases, it's low this year because of the coronavirus, but in a lot of other years, I've seen interest rates almost 7% or higher for students. And I just don't think that the federal government should be making that much interest off of students when they first get started. I think there's some other things that they should do to revise the student loan system. I actually write in my book, I talk about 10 changes that I think need to happen in the student loan system. We don't need to go through all of them, but I think that there's a lot of steps that we can take where borrowers are being told every single year how much student loan debt they have without having to log in. They should just be sent a letter or an email or something that shows how much debt they have. I think that there's some other changes that they need to make. I think every state, for example, should have a student loan advisor, advocate, or ombudsman uh, who you can go to and say, okay, I live in Alabama. Here's the person I talk to if I'm struggling with my student loan debt. So I think there's some real changes that need to happen in the industry, and I would say that we're seeing some interest in that direction, but I think more needs to happen.
Totally. So I guess what advice would you give for your 15-year-old self? It can be in terms of anything.
Yeah, that's a great question. Well, I'd say in terms of anything, I would say that just focus on saving as much as possible, as early as possible. I mean, you seen those charts that show that if you start saving for retirement when you're 15 or 16 versus when you're 35, the 35-year-old you is never going to catch up to the 16-year-old you. So certainly, yeah, if you can save right now, start saving as much money as possible. And then, uh, I was a first generation college student, so neither of my parents have a bachelor's degree. And so it was really, I was pretty lucky that I got through school with as little debt as I did, and getting through, because I didn't have anyone there specifically to help guide me through that. And so I would say, looking back now, I would have reached out to some people that maybe could have helped guide me a little bit more. Again, I was very lucky. I think my wife and I both kind of figured things out being first generation college students, but there's people out there that can help you. And so reach out to them and let them help you, walk you through the process.
Okay. Thank you so much. This was super insightful. I really did come into this interview not knowing much about the whole student loan process. And since I'm a rising sophomore, I think it's really a good time for me and obviously my audience to start getting our heads more involved in this, because it's a huge part of our futures. It can, like you said, it can affect our whole financial situation, what we do in our lives. So yes,
Yeah,
thank you so much.
for sure. Absolutely. It was fun.
So that's the end of the interview, and yes, I definitely feel a whole lot more comfortable about the whole college application process, and specifically student loans. Ryan definitely gave us a whole lot of information, and I really hope some of your questions and concerns regarding this topic were answered. And if you have any more questions, you can contact Ryan through his website, which I'm going to put in the episode description. Also, get excited because Wi-Fi Matters FinEd will be doing another Basics of Financial Literacy workshop on Wednesday, August 26th at 12:45 p.m. Central Time. The link for this will be in the episode description, and join this amazing workshop if you want to improve your knowledge in this field. Also, we're going to be partnering with an amazing youth organization, Dream Hustle Code, to conduct the workshop. Thank you guys so much for listening, and I can't wait to talk to you next time.